Civilization is not an idea, not something with material reality, not an object taking up space. Were it mere buildings, then ruins would be civilization, say sacked Carthage. But it's not. It's not unread books in unattended libraries. It's no more musical artifacts than it is wind wailing through hollow trees. Civilization is an agreement between people about rules. At a certain point of degeneration or growth, civilization might and should be imposed by some more benevolent power upon some mere chaos of willfulness and self-seeking. Barbarians have to be subdued, their barbaric practices suppressed, their savage culture extinguished. Not all behaviors are equal, you see. We're not speaking about technology, but of sensibilities. So there's the specifics of culture, modes of dress, hairstyles, face painting, shavings, piercings, tattoos. Incidental. It's rule of law and not compassion, but, say, charity for the, say, virtuous poor and widows and orphans and those who cannot care for themselves. Those who will not care for themselves, well, the determined, will always find a way to destroy themselves. My 600-pound life. So we are civilized either by temperament and custom or by force, the way some children are mild and need few rules, and some are undisciplined, spoiled, and need effective punishment. I very, very rarely punished my son, like a 1-minute timeout in the corner. You sit next to him and hold his hand and have a talk. Done. But punishment for people who are and who have been surrounded by stupid people. Unlearn it. I'm saying this because I was hearing news about a certain scum culture and ethos with regard to our neighbors to the south, specifically the cartels, Zeta, Sinaloa, Ciudad Juárez, Nuevo Laredo, Tijuana, Matamoros, savage border towns ruled by drug cartel anarchy and terror. Scum. Unless it's your head on the block, it doesn't matter, the details. It's like knowing the details of the Gestapo compared to the SS. Maybe a little different, but so what? Yes, that's history, not current events, but it's just the difference between a depraved legacy and a depraved present. If you're not affected, as by violence and crime on your very streets, it's practically theory, like sewer gas, that you get used to. So I was thinking about what civilization is. What happens when the agreement falls apart and there is no power to impose justice? The rules of civilization are no longer at play, and you can't play with cheaters. Civilization is not a thing, an object. It is a set of rules that apply only under particular circumstances. When those circumstances change, behavior, responses must change. So los Zetas, the letter people, whose names must not be uttered, such as their terror, like Voldemort. It's not just that they behead, say, journalists. They sew in peonies where tongues once were. Funny. They took the time and trouble, the care to do that. They are to be destroyed through uncivilized means, on a night or week or month of long knives. They must be isolated and butchered as one butchers pigs, not warned, not frightened, not driven away, not reformed, not saved, slaughtered. Also their children must be killed, and their wives, and their abuelitas. Genocide like Joshua son of Nun against the Nephilim in the land of Canaan, because there was a point where they became satanic. No quarter. Is this savage? Of course it is. But civilization, like the Constitution, is not a suicide pact. Night of the Long Knives was a Nazi thing. Soviet purges just swept people up, innocent with the guilty, if there were any guilty. KGB custom was to come for you at 3 in the morning, the devil's hour. But no quarter. A very unchristian proposition, you assert, perhaps. Let's examine the point. Jesus could afford to sacrifice himself, offer himself as the archetypal victim, because he was the Son of God. Among other things, it is his nature and purpose to sacrifice and suffer and die. So may it be for every good man to be selfless. But the family situation of Jesus did not stop only with his father, or rather it did stop there, brothers and sisters, including some of us, but he was, not married and had no children. He could afford to sacrifice himself. No one was depending on him. Please don't quibble. My meaning is clear. It is the first duty of a man to protect his family, by which is not meant his birth family, the one that happenstance or providence placed him helpless within. A man's real family becomes the one that he himself forms out of his own character and commitment. It has dependence. A man who follows his theoretical ideals about helping his neighbor or the stranger or the monster at the sacrifice of his children, this person is not just a fool, he is a reprobate. Help the stranger. Second, perhaps as a way of teaching your children about decency, about civilized conduct. It's not me first, it's mine first, on almost every level of decency. When society, culture, government fails to protect from savages, when the social compact is abrogated, disavowed, then vigilantism is not just understandable, it is required as an act of survival. Honor and manliness now forbidden, these are civilized and barbarian traits both, but self-defense is justice. To save civilization, the families of monsters will suffer, as in the decline of civilization, the families of the innocent do suffer. This is not Old Testament versus New Testament. It is how to save a society in the first instance, and how to save an individual in the second. Old Testament, New Testament. No contradiction, different contexts. Evil is not tamed or accommodated, it is contained or destroyed. You might tame a wild, fierce animal, but do not trust it around children. This is the battlefield upon which we find ourselves. Savage gangs, cartels, and their filthy, corrupt governments, among which I count the current American regime. We who adhere to that highest American ideal, rule of law, we would be peaceful, but must be fierce. Find the multiple heads of the monster and lop them off, which follows the cartel's example, only virtuously let the guilty suffer. Perhaps the monster's limbs, the digits, little toes, will fall still. Satan cannot be saved. Like the poor, the evil will always be with us. With the poor, we are kind and firm, mindful of compassion, diligent to not enable sloth, a forbidden word, prudent in our stewardship, grateful for our own blessings. With evil, we must be intolerant and judgmental and utterly bigoted, and we must hate it. God loves, but he hates. Jesus rejoices always, but he was angry. Deal with it, both. Different circumstances call up different reactions out of a righteous character. We are at the end of our civilization. Only a great awakening could actually save us, understanding that every civilization falls. Almost all of the kings of Israel were bad. So what hope have we? A politician and presidential aspirant once observed, to great derision, that about half of Americans get an unearned government check. Approximately 25 million other Americans get a government check for their employment. Is that 60% of Americans, not counting invaders? I'm too lazy and self-indulgent to bother to verify and bother to do the math. But who has the grit to stand against the check writer? European college students have been observed to riot at the mere suggestion of receiving less than their parents did, regardless of any impending calamity. Any continent is doomed that has to look to the Germans to save it. And here we are, open borders, paying illegals $10,000 in tribute to their, brownness? Indigence? Can I say that? I'd say the same of Norwegians if they were invading. The Vikings were monsters, my people, then. See the point? Uncivilized. What hope? No hope. Or only that which will come from sacrifice, blood sacrifice, in the case of, say, monstrous drug lords and their acolytes. And there are not enough men in the world resolute enough to pick up knives and start butchering the pigs. I have been vegetarian since I was a teenager, and that's likely before you were born. I'm not bloodthirsty. I'm starving for justice. So, as I sometimes do, I ask again, am I serious? Of course not. You don't kill families. Well, drone strikes, bombing terrorist compounds. What's the euphemism? Collateral damage. Collateral, aside from loans, is a word nobody ever uses except as a modifier of damage, collateral damage. Damage here is a euphemism for killing. And killing is a euphemism for, well, fill it in yourself. Then do the same for abortion. People who use euphemisms are not serious. And that's why I say, kill them. I want to be taken for serious.